It's good to be back on IU Sports Sunday. Alongside Ben Howler, I'm Nick Rodecap, thrilled to be with you on the 19th of January, 2025, one day before the national championship in the college football playoff. Ben, it's good to be back. We've got a lot to talk about. Even though Indiana football season is long over, I'll tell you what, there's been a lot of chatter around IU basketball. You were in Columbus on Friday night. How was it watching that one in person?
First of all, it's good to be back. I feel like it's been it feels like over months since the last time both you and I were at on the show together. But Friday was good. Obviously, the chatter has been negative. Everyone knows what happened on last two games before Ohio State. It felt like it was hard to even overreact to what happened just because of the just how bad they lost. Friday, though, I think just showed that it's felt like this for multiple years for Indiana, and it's just that sometimes the margin of victory in these losses and how bad Indiana's gotten blown out in the Mike Woodson era, that's not always indicative of how good Mike Woodson's teams are, at least to start games. I think it just shows that Indiana may struggle a bit when they get when they get down by a decent deficit. But I think Friday showed that they still are a competent basketball team, not necessarily a NCAA tournament basketball team. But I think it shows that they're not actually 25 points at home worse than Illinois and 25 points worse than Iowa.
And I will say, I was in Iowa and Nebraska for both of those games. I said this on Twitter, but it felt like kind of by the end of both of those games, there was just this sense of quitting for Indiana men's basketball. Like whenever they get down big, you've got comparisons like Mike Woodson's trying to coach college like the NBA sometimes. In the NBA, you've got 82 games. You can afford to just kind of pack it in one night if you just don't have it. But in college, only 31 games. Every single one matters. Every single one counts. But by the end of those games, you would sometimes just see this sense of quit, the sense of the body language saying, oh, well, we're down big, like at Iowa. We're down 24-5. Oh, well, it's over. And I remember Cruz Martin and I, we were driving back from Iowa. We were listening to Kent Sterling talking about the aftermath of that game. IU led against Iowa, but it never felt like they had a chance. And that was the kind of vibe that we got inside Carver Hawkeye Arena as well. But I'll tell you what, Ohio State, second year in a row in Columbus, Anthony Leal has made the game-deciding play. Last year it was, of all things, a corner three. This year, it was an emphatic block in overtime that sealed the 1-point win. That arena, Value City Arena, doesn't look like there's any atmosphere there. Is that a fair assessment?
It's usually true, and it was especially true last year when that game was on like a Tuesday night. Both teams were kind of out of tournament contention, at least good chance they're out of tournament contention. Friday night was actually pretty solid. I think just because of the fact that it was a Friday night. I mean, the arena is massive. It's bigger than Gainbridge Fieldhouse here in Indianapolis. It seriously felt like the Ohio State program was doing the team at least was doing a little better than they are right now. And really shout out to the Ohio State fans for showing up. I think it was a bit more of just that, all right, let's go out and do something in a big city like Columbus on Friday night, as opposed to just, I don't know how many of those fans were necessarily, passionate Ohio State basketball fans, but it still got pretty decently loud when Ohio State was able to make that comeback and then force it to overtime.
So I just looked it up, 19,500 for a college basketball arena.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. No wonder. That makes a lot more sense. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, but, man, yeah. I tell you, though, near the end of regulation, I mean, Ohio State was down 10. They kind of stage a comeback. For some reason, I was thinking of, I don't even remember who it is, but there's a guy who I think shares a last name with an NBA player. I was thinking of the NBA player.
John Mobley.
Yes, I was thinking of Evan Mobley, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yep.
John Mobley can hoop.
Yeah.
It was impressive to watch him.
Well, Ohio State's in a really interesting spot. They have a lot of talent. First and foremost, one of their best players is away from the program right now. I still don't think there's a reason for Meechie Johnson for being away from the program, but they're really young. They got a lot of contribution in the last few weeks from freshmen. And especially that was true on Friday night. And I think you kind of saw John Mobley's a freshman. He had a great game, but he made some really just low IQ plays down the stretch. I don't want to say low IQ plays, just plays that a freshman would make. Credit Leo for the block, obviously, but that was not a good shot at the end of the overtime period. And then Ivan Nayagovan, the big man from Croatia, another freshman for Ohio State, who had a few really nice plays in a row, couple blocks on Umar Ballo, had a huge bucket at the start of overtime, I believe. Another freshman, but he got a couple of baskets there in the overtime period, and then in a close game took a horrible 21-foot 2-point jump shot that I think missed just about everything. And that's just the kind of stuff that Ohio State's dealing with right now with a lot of freshmen. And, it's nice to see, at least for Indiana, that they played a smarter, higher IQ game than Ohio State did with Ohio State's freshmen.
Yeah, that shot by Nayagovan, it was like a baseline fadeaway jumper, but he's like 7'2".
Yeah.
It was almost like I was thinking, like, oh my goodness, Valentine.
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, you're feeling confident, but that kind of heat check in that moment.
None of them were that bad for Mobley, and Mobley obviously gets more leash. The dude had 23, 24 points in that game. But still there were shots like that for John Mobley, too. Bruce Thornton's the veteran and the best player on that team, averages 17 points a game. He's also a point guard. You have a lot of creativity and freedom when your best player is a point guard, but I think Indiana did a really good job taking him away, and then once you take him away, it's like Michi Johnson's out, and then another one of their best player was out, and Devin Royal, their second leading scorer, sophomore. But credit Indiana's defense. I think Ohio State was a team that felt like if there were any team in the Big Ten to be able to come back from a 10-point deficit, it kind of was Ohio State, just because they have those really good shooters that can kind of go on a run.
And Ohio State you talk about Bruce Thornton. Indiana was able to kind of keep him out of the equation. He still went for 18, 6, and 3.
Yeah.
Ohio State, it's weird because some people were calling them basement dwellers after the game. And sure, their record isn't great, but they were top 30 in the net when Indiana played them. That's a quad 1 game. And plus, I'll just say it right now, winning should not be looked upon as a bad thing. Like, there were people saying, I can't even enjoy that we won because our losses are so bad. What kind of mindset is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between, like, being upset, obviously, after the Iowa and Illinois game, but, like, some people just hate fun.
I know.
Some people just just can't let themselves be happy. I mean, the number one argument I see is obviously the number one storyline is the keep Woodson, fire Woodson, and the people that are like, this win means they're further away from firing Woodson. But look, they either, in my eyes, my prediction right now is they either make the tournament or he's gone.
Yeah,
and
I think that's fair.
This win at Ohio State doesn't necessarily put them in the tournament, but are you really going to be upset if they make the NCAA tournament?
You shouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, man, it wasn't even that long ago. It was Woodson's first year. They're winning a play-in game against Wyoming. I was watching that game in my room going crazy. Mm-hmm. And then they got the brakes beaten off of them by St. Mary's because of a horrible travel schedule, which never should have existed, but it did. But I'll tell you what, 2 nights ago now, I think the biggest story was Luke Goody, by far. That's not exactly groundbreaking analysis, I realize. Umar Ballo went for 21 and 15, which is just dominant. 5 of 7 from the free throw line, too. I mean, shoot, that might as well be 100% for him. Incredible. But Luke Goody was, I think, the biggest difference maker in that game. Because he started knocking down shots, and he looked like the guy that IU brought in. Like this 3-point sharpshooter who can come in and just make an instant impact in the game. 23 points, 4 of 7 from 3-point land for Luke Goody. And the timing of it, too. Because I think, it's very public what he said on Twitter at this point. But I'll tell you what, he backed it up, and that was really, really cool to watch.
I made a comment earlier this week after the Illinois loss just about how if you go back to the beginning of the season and the offseason, you tell yourself that Luke Goody and Anthony Leal are in your starting 5, it's probably not a good thing because I don't think it says more about them, but it says more about, the Carlisle who's not playing well, the Galloway who's not been playing well. But I mean, Luke Goody proved me wrong. He looks like a bona fide Big Ten basketball starter, one of the best players on offense the last few games. He just adds so much depth in terms of he has the ability to use his size to get down low, but he really doesn't. I mean, he's a really good 3-point shooter. Obviously, that's what the one thing he kind of did at Illinois. But I think he's adding some dimension to his game of being able to score from inside.
Goody and Ballo combining for 44 points in Indiana's win over Ohio State. They've got Northwestern coming up. Big games for the men's and women's team on the docket. Of course, the women's team playing at noon today against number 4 USC. It's a whiteout at Assembly Hall, and there's snow on the ground, so I guess it's fitting. We'll talk more about those games and more when we come back. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Ben Haller, Nick Rodecap with you, and Ben, Indiana men's basketball, we've talked about it throughout the last couple months about how this stretch of the schedule doesn't get any easier for them. At least entering it, it was 11 straight Quad 1 games. Next on the docket is a road trip to Northwestern on Wednesday night. The one advantage I think Indiana has is that Northwestern is coming off a shorter turnaround. They are at Michigan today. Michigan, which just lost to Minnesota.
Yep.
Shout out Dawson Garcia. Electric. I would not want to be Northwestern today because Michigan's going to be fired up, to say the least. A very talented team that will be coming to Bloomington here in a couple weeks. Excited for that one. But it seems like weird things happen at Welsh Ryan Arena. I think Northwestern is the only OG Big Ten team that Mike Woodson has not beaten yet. But Indiana will have a chance to change that. Northwestern, though, is no slouch, and I think that's putting it lightly.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like every year, but especially this year, the Big Ten, it's just all packed in the middle. There's usually one or two teams that stand out at the top, one or two teams that stand out at the bottom, and Northwestern is just flat in the middle of the middle in the Big Ten. They've had some struggles against really good teams, 2-5 in Quad 1 games, but they don't necessarily have any bad losses, and that's the best part of their resume. Maybe, I don't know, this is trending towards a bad loss. They lost neutral site game to Butler, which at the time didn't seem like no huge issue, but that's a Quad 2 loss now. Seems to be trending in the wrong direction. But they have maybe one of the best 1-2 punches in the country in Nick Martinelli, Brooks Barnheiser. For a while, both those guys were averaging over 20 points per game. That rarely ever happens on a college basketball team where two guys are averaging 20 points a game. Outside of them, it kind of drops off, but those two have been so spectacular this year. And they're really tough matchups. Barnheiser's that 6'6", 6'7" guard that can run the point a little bit, and then Nick Martinelli's that stretch 4 who's 6'8", but has really good handle.
Martinelli, too, shooting 42% from 3.
Yeah.
He's averaging 20, Barnheiser averaging 18. The only other player in double figures, Jalen Leach, averaging 13.4. But Northwestern, they're only 11-6. I feel like they're better than that. But yeah, you talk about them losing in Tempe to Butler, and Butler has been awful this year. My sister goes there, and all she ever talks about is, oh man, yeah, our basketball team stinks. Yeah, but it's okay. They've still got a little time to figure it out. But I'll tell you what, that game against Indiana, Northwestern Indiana, 7 Eastern on Wednesday night, that's going to be a fun one, but Northwestern taking on Michigan first. That's going to be fun. I feel like that's one that I'm going to tune in for after the Indiana women take on USC. It's a whiteout at Assembly Hall today. And thinking back to the last time there was a whiteout for a women's game, it was when Indiana beat then number 4 Iowa. That was fun. But USC is undefeated in the Big Ten. They've been pretty much just beating the snot out of everybody. Juju Watkins, for my money, probably the best player in the country right now. Kiki Iriafen came over from Stanford. She's averaging 19 and 9. Watkins is averaging 25.5 points per game, which is top 3 in the country. USC scoring 85 points per game, outscoring opponents by 30 points. I mean, this is about as loaded a team as you'll find in women's college basketball. Indiana kind of, I'll say, hung with UCLA at Assembly Hall a couple weeks ago, but they never had a shot of winning that game. And if the shots aren't falling, if USC's getting a favorable whistle like UCLA did, I think we might see something similar today because, man, USC is loaded.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel as much of a home court advantage in the UCLA game. Now, a lot of that's still being, fans are coming back from break and everything like that. Actually, I still think it was over break. So I think the students should make an impact today in this game, and that should hopefully, be a little different than UCLA. This team just doesn't quite have the depth that UCLA does, but, man, up top they have maybe the most front-loaded talent in the country. And for the women's team, it's been so up and down. I mean, it has been really back and forth. It feels like what we talked about at the beginning of the season is still ringing true, where they don't quite have that star. And they can put together really good games. Some days they're a really good basketball team when all their role players are stepping up and having really good games, but it just requires so many different players to click and to be on.
You need everybody to be on at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. It's not like, Indiana really has. I mean, yeah, they have somebody who can maybe take over. Like you'll see Yarden Garzone do it from time to time. But if she's off, the shots aren't falling. It's just, I don't know. Indiana's not the same team. And you look. For some reason, both Indiana basketball programs just can't beat Illinois right now. I remember Austin Render saying on the broadcast of the women's game, he said, this feels almost exactly like the men's game. There was just no defense. Illinois put up 25 in the first quarter, 35 in the first half, while holding Indiana to just 22. And the Illini took that game by 14 in Assembly Hall on Tuesday night. That's kind of puzzling because I know this is not necessarily an apples-to-apples comparison, but you think back to last year, who did the Indiana women play before they took on Iowa?
Illinois.
It was Illinois.
Yeah.
It was in Champaign, and Sydney Parrish was hurt. That was an upset win for Illinois. So what I'm hearing is, Iowa was number 4 in the country at the time, by the way. USC is number 4 in the country coming into today. What I'm hearing is Indiana's going to win this game going away. Obviously, right?
Obviously.
Because history repeats itself. But also, when Illinois shoots 60% from 3 and 47% from the floor, I mean, good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, it was certainly trending that way when you said it felt like the men's game in the first quarter. Obviously giving up 25 points in that first quarter, 60 points in the first half of the men's game. The defense did a good job settling in by the end of the game. I think, all things considered with 25 in the first quarter, they only gave up 68. I have not been impressed offensively in so many games for this Indiana team. And I think part of it's having that star. The one thing I will say, when we talked about it the first few weeks, one thing that has improved a lot is Indiana's Shea Chesky has been playing so much better. I think I wasn't surprised. It just was a matter of time before she started to settle in a little bit. But she had 13 more. Chloe Martell had 13. Parrish had 13. But Yarden Garzone only has 3. Lily Meister has a single point. 0 for 2 from the field. Those are the kind of things that you're not going to beat. You're not going to beat a really good team, let alone a team like Illinois.
Yeah, and especially, Meister, we knew that she was going to have some gigantic shoes to fill since Mackenzie Holmes left. And you thought maybe Caroline Striplin might pick up some of that slack. But neither of them are Mackenzie Holmes level. That's no disrespect to them, but Mackenzie Holmes was an All-American, one of the best players in Indiana women's basketball history. And when your 2 post players combine for 7 points, yeesh, yeah. And Garzone, I heard this might be, I think she sat the entire second half, or at least very close to the entire second half. Only played 20 minutes in total, 3 points. Mm-hmm. And she's one of your best offensive weapons. You could argue Garzone averages around 14 a game. Indiana lost by 14. That may have been a key difference maker. But also, like I said, Illinois shot 60% from 3. Indiana's going to have to be better defensively today because otherwise USC might run them out the gym. But big game, Assembly Hall. It's a whiteout. Like you said, the students are back. And I think that's big. Plus, Terry Morin, there's kind of this thing about Indiana on the women's side. You can't keep them down for too long.
Yeah.
They're going to surge back eventually, and with any luck for them, that's coming up near the end of the season because the tournament's only about a month and a half away. Big Ten tournament, I should say. The NCAA tournament closer to 2 months away. But that's at noon on NBC, big NBC, which is nice. Speaking of games on NBC this weekend, how about Purdue? On the men's side, I should say.
Yeah.
I thought that they were going to regress more than they have without Zach Edey. But going out to the West Coast winning both of those games and your fans taking over both of the arenas. I mean, that's trust Matt Painter.
I think it's just a sign of what Indiana could do. Specifically taking over those arenas. I just don't. When those games roll around come March, I don't know how the vibes are going to be around the program. But yeah, Purdue's put together a pretty nice resume. They have 4 quad one wins now. I mean, there were concerns around this Purdue team, and there definitely still are, in terms of where all the scoring was going to come from if Braden Smith could do it all himself. But this is a really connected Purdue team. And a lot of these guys, you lose a lot of your scoring in Zach Edey and a lot of your production in Zach Edey, but you bring back a lot of guys who have played together and who some people thought, only could gelled because of Zach Edey. But in terms of the connectivity, I mean, they have shown that it was not just because of Zach Edey.
Yeah, I mean, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, Caleb First, Trey Kaufman-Renn. Those guys have played a lot of basketball. Yeah. And I think, too, it's a testament to the value of scheduling tough early in the season with Purdue because they played a ton of really tough non-conference games. The 3 that come to mind, Marquette, which was an ugly loss, which Matt Painter said they used as a teachable moment. Here's what we need to work on. It got exposed. That's fine. Texas A&M, a close loss in Indianapolis, and then they also took on Alabama, and they beat Alabama. And Alabama is... I mean, the way they played against Kentucky yesterday, they put up 100 points. And that's their thing, yes. But, man, they are probably one of the most impressive teams in the most impressive conference in the country, at least for my money. Going on the road to Kentucky and winning, that's something you'd like to see Indiana do one day in the near future. But that might be wishful thinking. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, he's Ben Haller. I'm Nick Rodecap. It is the meat of Big Ten basketball season, and Ben, I said it a little bit earlier on, but I cannot get it through my head. Maybe this is just me being naive, but I can't understand what would possess somebody to hate winning. Winning is good, but for some Indiana basketball fans, probably a very small subset, relatively speaking, the win over Ohio State was a bad thing. It frazzles me as to why winning could be bad, especially on the road in the Big Ten. But everybody's entitled to their opinion. Doesn't mean the opinion's right, but everybody can have an opinion.
I mean, it's hard because I think a lot of the crowd that is getting upset about these wins is kind of the older crowd that was around at least to see some part of the prime IU hoops in the 70s, 80s. But that's not even like it's one thing if that was 7 years ago and it's like, all right, they've just fallen off so much in such a short period of time. That was 40 years ago. I mean, I don't say that to criticize the Indiana basketball program. I say that this is not some crazy fall off of the last few years. This is Indiana. You can say what you will about Tom Crean. I don't think there's any debate that he's been the best out of Mike Woodson and Archie Miller, but I still think, relatively speaking, there's been 3 coaching periods that have not gone exactly the way that Indiana fans really would have hoped. That's 3. I mean, that is where your program is right now, with 3 different coaches, likely a third one out the door pretty soon if they don't make the tournament. This is not, some crazy recent fall off.
Yeah, it's I've talked about this a lot. On social media, probably more than I should. But I've talked about it, and so I'm going to stand by what I said. This is a program that once upon a time, the expectation was to fight for a national championship every year, to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament and hopefully be the last one standing at the end. Now, Indiana has not made the national championship, has not made the Final Four since before you and I were alive, 2002, which, yes, predates us by 1 year. There was a standard of excellence that I said is long gone. And that's just a fact. I mean, they haven't made the second weekend of the NCAA tournament since, 2013?
16.
16. Yeah, 16. Okay. 16 and then 13, and then before that I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that the standard of excellence, I think, has been gone for so long. it's kind of hard, I think, for some people to get to grips with that reality. But the fact is, for the majority of both of our lives, Indiana basketball has not been what it used to be.
Yeah.
And that's not a controversial opinion, I don't think. So all that is to say that you can have both. Like, you can be really frustrated when they quit and they look like they don't care, like they did against Nebraska and Iowa and Illinois. Illinois especially. I mean, man, that was one of the worst games in Assembly Hall history.
Yeah.
You can be frustrated at that and then also enjoy when they win. You can have both. And I don't think some people understand that. But one game, in terms of the big picture, yeah, one game doesn't change everything. It could be a sign of things to come, or that momentum could just completely evaporate on Wednesday night. Either of those things can happen. But as of right now, I like the way Indiana men's basketball responded at Ohio State. They blew a 10-point lead late. Yeah. Did they play a little shaky down the stretch in that game? Absolutely. But they won. At the end of the day, winning's all that matters. And even, through all the computer metrics and whatnot. Just win, and the rest will take care of itself. Indiana, though, I think you're right. If Indiana doesn't make the NCAA tournament, that would be 2 years in a row under Mike Woodson, and he might be shown the door. But I don't think that they would get rid of him mid-season, especially not right now. I didn't think that was ever on the cards. But this late in the season, relatively speaking, I mean, we're over halfway through at this point. It just seems silly with all the talent this roster is loaded with.
Yeah, but that's, I said it last week on this show. Indiana fans are so tired of hearing that just, this team has so much talent, but they're not able to put it together. It seems like it's been the story for the last few years now. But I will say the nice thing about it is when you're down like Indiana is and you lost 2 straight by 25 plus, you know that it's there. You know that you have a chance to put some wins together just because of the talent that you have on the roster. It's not like, it definitely adds to the frustration when they struggle, but it also, they still have a better chance to bounce back.
That's true. And especially when you consider that they've been doing this without Malik Renew, who got hurt against Rutgers on the second possession of the game. And, we haven't heard from him in almost 3 weeks. I think Gus Johnson said before the game against Ohio State that Renew looked good in the shoot-around. So that's good. Maybe he'll be back soon. But Indiana, I think, needs him back because when they get into foul trouble, which it seems like has been happening a lot lately, a lot of players picking up 2 fouls early. Mm-hmm. Mbako's done it. Galloway's done it. Rice did it against Ohio State and sat the entire first half. When they have to go into their bench, the depth falls off really quickly. Let's face it, Luke Goody had never scored 20 points in a game before at the college level until Friday night. So whether or not that depth is going to show up and pick up the slack kind of depends, I think, on the game. But Goody having a career high certainly helped. Nobody's going to sneeze at that. But Indiana, I think, cannot wait to get Malik Renew back. The question is Mike Woodson going to go back to that nauseating 2-big lineup once that day comes around and Renew is healthy? I hope no.
Look, it just depends on who they're playing. I think there are teams where a 2-big lineup can work at certain parts in the game, but I think you just need to be able to adapt and adjust. Now, obviously, as a coach, what the response to that's going to be? You want to be the one to dictate the way the game's played, but sometimes, the realistic thing is you're just not the better team, and it's going to be tough to dictate that. So I don't know, but that was my rant. You weren't here last week. That was my little rant on the show last Sunday. Was against the people who were saying that the crowd that was saying that Indiana's better without Malik Renew. Yeah, I think we have been shown, at least in the Illinois-Iowa game, that that's not true.
Yeah. I believe, last week, God, the Iowa game was, last Saturday. That was only 6 days ago. Yeah. We were driving back from Iowa City that night. Got back to Indy at about 5 a.m., I think. That was fun. But, I think back to the way Iowa ran the floor in that game. They did run Indiana out of the gym. And inside, it wasn't just Peyton Sanford raining threes either. I mean, it was Owen Freeman on the inside, a sophomore, the Big Ten co-freshman of the year last year, just kind of bullying Oumar Ballo for most of that game, especially early. Freeman was balling out. He said some things after the game, too, which I wanted to go back to because he said that it was not a co-freshman of the year thing between him and Mackenzie Mbako. Owen, you think back to last year, Mackenzie Mbako threw an inbounds pass off your back because you weren't looking, and then scored over you. So, and Indiana beat you, by the way, last year. Now, that was last year. This is this year. But I feel like if you're going to run your mouth, you probably shouldn't have gotten embarrassed when you played each other head-to-head. That's just me, though. That's just me. Whatever. Owen Freeman's going to make a great enterprise rent-a-car sales. Oh, my goodness. Owen Freeman's going to make a great rent-a-car salesman one day. Mackenzie Mbako will probably be playing in the NBA in some capacity next year. Although, after the way he's been playing lately, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Well, his draft stock is plummeting right now.
Yeah.
He was at one point looking like a lottery pick, but he has been one of the most, in my eyes, one of the most disappointing players in Indiana for a decent time now.
What was it? The Penn State game, he had like 20. And then he's just been totally slumping. It's really weird. Because I know we're tired of talking about talent and potential, right? Mm-hmm. But it just seems like Mbako is really, really slumped over these last few games. And there's still time to break out of it, yeah. But I can't find the exact numbers in front of me. But I think since Penn State, it was entering Ohio State, he was like 3 of 24 from the floor in his last 3 games. That's the kind of thing where it starts to, I think, weigh on you mentally a little bit. And you start to maybe doubt yourself. Like, I got to start settling for terrible shots. And they were talking about it on the Fox broadcast. No, when you're slumping, you want to get to the rim, get to the free throw line. And Mbako did that a little bit, but still, he's a long way from where he was even just, maybe 3 weeks ago?
Yeah. It's been weird for Mbako. I think I would like to see him be more aggressive, but he's just seemed so disinterested the last few games. That's been the biggest thing is there are guys, obviously, and Mackenzie Mbako is a score-first guy. He relies on his offense. That's what he's there for. There are guys who have like that, who have off nights and are still able to contribute, but Mbako really isn't one of those guys. It really feels like, if he's having another off night, it's just how much value does he bring to being on the floor?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, guys that Indiana has, even if Oumar Ballo's not scoring, which is very rare when you're leading the team in scoring, but if he's having an off night from the floor, he'll still dominate on the glass.
Yeah.
As long as he's, trying, then he's okay. You saw that he's just stuffing the stat sheet right now. And, I've ragged on him a little bit because at times it feels like the effort might not be there. But, man, when he's on, there aren't many better bigs in the Big Ten than Mackenzie Mbako, than Oumar Ballo. Mackenzie Mbako, not the case. And I think, this, bear with me here, but I think that the way you conduct yourself off the court has something to do with the way you play on the court. I have a class with Mackenzie Mbako and Ja'Kai Newton, both of them. Not going to name the class, but first day of class, we're in groups. We're planning out a group project that's going to go along the course of the semester. Neither he nor Ja'Kai Newton even brought their backpacks, which I understand. This was the day of the Illinois game. I get it. Like, it's day one. They didn't bring their backpacks to class. There are some baseball players in that class. They did. But neither of them brought their backpacks. It just, I get it. You're not here to play school. But if you don't get good grades, this sounds like me just being a total geek, I realize. But if the grades aren't there, if you don't at least, look, I know their lives are very different from ours, but not even bringing a backpack to class. What? I just thought that was weird. Maybe I'm making a big stink out of nothing. Maybe I sound like an old man. But that just seems very strange to me. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. The day and age is just so different now with these guys getting paid as much as they are. Like the rule. Here's my hot take. I don't even know if it's a hot take. This is just where things are trending. I don't even think you're. At some point, I don't know if it's going to be the near future, but at some point in the future, you're not even going to have to be enrolled. You're not going to have to take classes to be playing on these college teams. So I don't know. I'm not going to blame college basketball players for not really caring about school.
I know it's just like it's weird because one of them is in my group for this class, and I'll tell you what I'm not doing. I'm not going to carry a group project and do the work of somebody else because that person is getting paid to play basketball here. I get it. Like I said, you're not here to play school. But if you're in the class and you're in the group, you've got to put in the same amount of effort as everybody else. That's the way I see it. I know there are a lot of people, and you've probably experienced this too. There are a lot of people who are in a group project, they're in a group with you, and they don't try. They are complete dead weight. We've all experienced that. It seems like every time I'm in a group with people, they're dead weight, and I have to do all the work or we fail. But I feel like the way you represent yourself and the way you conduct yourself off the floor, like you're representing the program, right? You're representing your teammates. You're representing your coaches. You're representing the people who have come before you. If you're not bringing your stuff to class and even being a little bit interested while you're there, because the baseball guys do. There are 3 or 4 baseball guys in that class. They all bring their stuff. They all seem to pull their weight. We're only a week in. And I realize they're not in season yet, and that might change.
Yeah.
I sound like I sound like a boomer. I sound like an old head just being like, oh, you got to put in the work off the floor to put in the work on the floor. But that just didn't sit right with me.
Just give it some time. Wait to see.
I know.
To see. I mean, especially the day of a game. I'm surprised that I don't know why they even showed up.
But it was like 9:35.
I know, but like for college basketball players, game days are very long days. They're getting shoot-arounds in early. I would just give that some time.
Yeah, maybe it'll change. I sound like an old head. I know. That's me telling you to get off my lawn. But that's something that, I mean, I remember last year, Juliana LaMendola was in my sport marketing class that I was in. I remember the day of the Iowa game. I think we had was that when Adam Schefter came to talk with us? There was some guest speaker or something. She was there sitting in the front row. That was like the biggest game of her life. She was there. I think she left a little early, but she was there. As far as I could tell, she had her stuff with her. I don't know. I might be making a big stink out of nothing. But that's something to keep an eye on. I will keep an eye on it throughout the semester. I'll tell you that much. I'll be like the helicopter parent. Did you bring your stuff to class today? Because I'll tell you what I'm not doing. I'm not sitting back in a group project I can't sit back. I'm not letting other people in my group sit back while I have to carry and do all the hard work. And then we all get the same grade. Because that's not fair, in my humble opinion. On a lighter note, man, that was a long tirade about about group projects. Sports are just a giant group project anyway, right? You know,
that's one way to look at it for sure.
Yeah, but Mackenzie Mbako, I'd like to see him get right, because you think back to the end of last year, even earlier this year. I mean, he started this year shooting 50% from 3. He was on a torrid pace, and especially with the way he heated up at the end of last year, I think we're gonna need to see that sort of production again, or Indiana and their big picture tournament hopes still might be in trouble. I think, because the depth, like we talked about, just isn't there.
Yeah, I think that ultimately what it comes down to is just the quantity of players that are not living up to their expectations is big. I mean, it's just little things. Like Miles Rice, I think, is given up in a decent amount of games. Obviously, didn't have a real chance against Ohio State. Cannon Carlisle finally had a good game against Ohio State. His shot selection had been horrible before that Ohio State game.
Stinky.
Trey Galloway is just, I think you know what you're getting from Trey Galloway at this point, and you know what you're getting by not knowing what you're getting night in, night out. But the backcourt for me, it's just been so shaky.
Yeah. I feel like Miles Rice will have 3 or 4 awful passes per game where he's trying to, like, I'll use football for a second. He's trying to find Umar Ballo on a deep post, and he overthrows him by 10 yards. He's trying to just heave the ball up the floor to Ballo, and Ballo just runs out of room. Mm-hmm. I feel like Rice just does that a few times, and it just kind of makes you scratch your head because you're just giving away possessions, and it's very strange. But you talk about players giving up. I think that starts with the way the coaching staff kind of conducts itself in those big blowouts, because it seems like sometimes Mike Woodson gets this deer in the headlights look when Indiana's down big, and it seems like he just kind of freezes. And, as a former athlete who's had the wheels fall off in the middle of a game before, that's not a good feeling. But when it's your job, I feel like you should be able to respond in some capacity rather than just freezing and watching the brick house crumble around you, which I feel like is kind of what happens. That's just me saying what I see. I'm not trying to, be negative Nancy, which is very easy to do, as we've seen with some Indiana basketball fans. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It just seems like you shouldn't, because if you freeze as a coach, then yeah, of course your players are going to freeze. I mean, these guys are our age. They're not exactly, fully mentally developed adults yet. They rely on coaching to get them through these sorts of things. But if the coaching just isn't there, then the players will reflect that. So that's kind of the one worry, is like when Indiana gets down big, it's just, you can pretty much pencil it in as a loss. There's no semblance of them possibly coming back. And that's something that kind of sucks.
Yeah, unfortunately for Woodson, it kind of just feels like he's treating this like a retirement hobby. It's been, I don't know, just obviously you don't I'm not referring to all the stuff that the Hoosier Hysterics said, because obviously you don't know how credible any of that is. But there's the way that I think, the scouts have gone, the in-game adjustments. He's just has so much talent, and he's relying so much on the talent to make those adjustments themselves. It just hasn't felt like any of that has really been from him. I mean, there are certain moments in games where I think there are obvious adjustments that need to be made, and he just doesn't make them.
Yeah. The big one, I'm going to keep harping on this because for the big picture, for most of the season, it's been bad. Kanan Carlisle taking awful shots early in possessions and not getting benched. That killed them against Iowa. I'm replaying it in my head. All these times, he gets down the floor, gets one touch, chucks up a 3 with 2 guys in his face, misses, Iowa gets the rebound and scores in transition. Those are the kinds of plays that just kill you. And I feel like if it was most other coaches, Carlisle would have gotten benched pretty quickly. And credit to him against Ohio State, because he did do some good things. But for most of this season, that has not been the case. And it feels like if it were any other coach, I'd say, okay, hey, you're killing us. Come take a seat. Because, Bob Knight said, butt meets bench. Butt wants to get off bench. Butt wants to play better, that kind of thing, right? It's a motivator. It would motivate, I think, Kanan Carlisle to stop making stupid decisions with the ball in his hands. But, yeah, I mean, it just feels like, in the NBA, yeah, you can rely on talent to bail you out. Those guys are the best players in the world. But college is not the NBA. And I don't know. It seems like sometimes Mike Woodson coaches like it is the NBA. And that is, unfortunately, not a very good thing. But when we come back, we will continue talking Indiana sports, not just IU hoops either, because Indiana wrestling, yes, had a big win over Purdue a couple days ago. And, I mean, you might be with or against me on this. I think beating Purdue is always a good thing. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Hour 2 here on IU Sports Sunday. He's Ben Howler. I'm Nick Rotocap. We're with you 3 hours before the Indiana women are set to take on number 4 USC at Assembly Hall. It's a whiteout. There's snow on the ground, which I wasn't expecting more snow. But yeah, it's going to be 1 degree tonight, so I hope you're ready to go camping. This is perfect camping weather.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Yeah. Sheesh. But yeah, it's good. It's good to be back in Bloomington, back in the swing of things this semester. Going to be fun. I'm just thinking about how much is going to change between now and, what is it, May 7th or whatever it is. Indiana baseball will be here before we know it.
Yeah.
And they have gotten a lot of preseason praise, which has seemed to kind of be the hot thing to do among the national college baseball media, which there isn't a lot of, I'll admit. But, yeah, Indiana baseball picked by a few to win the Big Ten this year. This feels like their, I'm not going to say their last shot, but their best shot with this current roster to win the Big Ten. Devin Taylor will be a first-round pick in July. He's a preseason All-American. Tyler Cerny is a guy who's got some pro potential. They've got a ton of talented freshmen, too. This could be, if the pitching holds, we know the offense is going to be there. If the pitching is functional, which it was not last year, Indiana's going to have a really good chance to make some noise. And you'll be with them for a good chunk of the early portion of the season. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this season.
I'm very excited. I mean, once again, I think we learned something valuable from the last 2 seasons, and that 56 games, that is a long season. A really long season, and it is not like football. It is not even like basketball, where 1 or 2 losses, sets you off track a little bit. I mean, that's just the nature of the sport of baseball. Offensively, I mean, everything is coming together. That's what it seems to be. I mean, I really think the strength of each class, this might be Indiana's best offense since some of those Kyle Schwarber years, and I truly believe that. You have the senior veterans in Josh Pine and Jake Stadler. Pine has just been so steady at the plate for the 3 years that he's been here. Jake Stadler's been steady behind the dish as a catcher for Indiana for the last year or so. The junior class is obviously where the real stars are in Devin Taylor, Tyler Cerny. Sophomore class had some breakout guys, some unexpected guys in Jason Oliver, Joey Brancheski, both going to find spots in the lineup this year. Andrew Wiggins, a lot of Indiana fans excited to see him. Maybe one of the most, the highest ceiling guys. One of the highest ceiling guys on this Indiana team. And then, Hogan Denny, Jake Hanley, a couple of freshmen who I expect to get real at-bats right away. I mean, you combine all 4 of those classes. There are question marks on the pitching staff, but Mercer went out. A lot of attention in the portal to the pitching staff. Not necessarily to the numbers, when trying to find his guys, but wanted the stuff because he trusts in Dustin Glant to be able to fix some of those guys.
Yeah, and now you talk about the freshmen, the young guys. Every time I think of Andrew Wiggins, I think back to that nuke he hit against Penn State in the Saturday game, which was, for my money, probably the game of the year. Indiana was down, I think, 8-0 in the fourth, and that was one of the wildest comebacks I've ever seen.
This is a rough Connor Foley start.
Yeah,
and that was there was also. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was that the first game where it kind of felt like Drew Burr was okay? He's a legit.
That was the Drew Burr coming out party. Yeah,
long reliever party.
Yeah, because Foley was injured in that game, and it was I think it was his first start. It was either I thought it was
his last start before the injury.
Last start before the injury, which they described as back tightness. I don't know if that was really what it was, but either way, he missed like a month. It was never quite the same after that. But Drew Burr comes in and just starts shoving. I mean, it might be easy to pitch when it's 8-0, but the fact is, Penn State, they were a win away from winning the Big Ten.
Yeah. I mean, that was no matter what the record was, that was an incredibly potent offense.
Yes, they had some bats. I mean, they got all over Ty Bothwell the night before, and they got up big in that second game, and I'm thinking, oh, boy, I mean, this is bad. Then Drew Burr comes in, shuts him down, the bats get going, and Wiggins just crushes one to center field. I mean, 435 feet to dead center. I mean, you heard it off the bat. It sounded like a bomb went off. And he didn't even play that much last year, just because the outfield was so loaded. But now he's got a shot to really make some noise this year, I think.
Yeah, that's what's so special is like, okay, you have that memory with Andrew Wiggins. This is a guy who didn't get a ton of at bats last year. My memory is both you and I were there. The shocking news that Indiana was not going to start their all Big Ten second team first baseman, Joey Brancheski, and instead start Andrew Wiggins in their Big Ten tournament game against Ohio State, and Wiggins doubles first at bat, doubles down the left field line, scores a couple of runs, and has a great game.
Yeah, because that was when Devin Taylor was kind of out of whack.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is all coming back to me now. It's so weird because we've seen so many Indiana baseball games. I covered the team for a couple of years. You covered them last year. I think the year before as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we both covered the team for a couple of years. You go to a lot of games. You watch a lot of games. You call a lot of games. You're involved in a lot. But you still remember these moments, the moments that stick out. I completely had forgotten about the Andrew Wiggins starts in Omaha.
Yeah.
Because to me, the ones that stick out in my mind, the moments from Omaha, Jason Oliver's homer against Purdue, the splashdown that got them going off, that got them off and running. God, that Ohio State game was on crack, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that was when there were definitely some struggles in the bullpen.
Yeah.
At the end of the games.
Well, because Connor Foley, Indiana's ace last year, he should have been their ace. He just never. I wanted to see more out of him. Like him and Luke Sennard both. In a perfect world, if they're healthy, man, that would have been a great 1-2 punch. But yeah, Foley struggled. I remember he threw one at the backstop, and it looked like he just didn't care. Which, to be fair, when you know you're getting drafted, I get it. I guess I don't know. Foley throws one at the backstop. Reisdorf comes in, and God, he was such a wild card last year. He's with the Cubs organization now, which I didn't think was going to happen. But yeah, man. And then the Will Walsh complete game.
Yeah.
Will Walsh, a guy who for some reason is like the most bang average pitcher of all time. But the moment he steps foot on Charles Schwab Field, he turns into like prime Greg Maddux. I do not understand that.
That Nebraska roster was just loaded. I mean, they were. Indiana kind of just ran into a buzzsaw that was playing their best baseball at the best possible time. Obviously, had a very competitive series with them the couple weekends prior, but it was a fun weekend. It was a fun trip.
Yeah, and Nebraska. I mean, they bring a lot of those guys back too.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I know Noah Darling on Twitter. If you're into college baseball, Noah Darling is like the ultimate Big Ten truther. He said a Big Ten team will win a national championship in the next 8 years. And like, dude, I love the Big Ten as much as anybody else, believe me. But Big Ten national title? No, I don't think so. This conference, there just isn't enough pitching depth. That was ultimately what killed Nebraska in the NCAA tournament. They had some great bats last year. But man, the pitching just, the SEC is just so loaded when it comes to pitching. I mean, even if they're like, I'm thinking, I got bored, so I looked this up the other day. Ohio State's best pitcher last year was Landon Beidelshees, a lefty. He transferred to Arkansas.
Yeah.
Like, that's usually what happens.
Baseball has always had that issue just because the teams down south, they're able to practice all year round.
Yeah.
But I also think now that there's an NIL disparity between the SEC and everybody else that really just is going to widen the gap. Especially
for baseball, because, I mean, outside of maybe Nebraska, nobody else really has like a crazy baseball fan base. I'm talking about the OG Big Ten. Now, maybe Oregon, but let's be honest, like when you think Big Ten baseball, I know Oregon's a great program, but I just still can't picture them being in the Big Ten. Outside of Nebraska, the fan support isn't that great for Big Ten baseball. That's just a fact.
You're not wrong. I mean, Iowa has shown that like when they're good, they can get fans. But outside of that, like Indiana's got the third best baseball fan base in the Big Ten, at least the OG Big Ten. I'm just not familiar yet. I know UCLA and USC probably don't, considering they don't for basketball or football. Washington probably doesn't because they've struggled.
Yeah.
Oregon might. I don't know, 100%. I don't know how big of a baseball state Oregon is. Well, but at the same time, they don't have a pro team, so that might help Oregon's case. And obviously, Oregon State's got a great fan base.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And look, Indiana's, like, it was kind of weird, right? Because the last 2 years, if you look at it on paper, the last 2 seasons, compare them side by side, they feel pretty comparable. They went, one round within the regional further in 2 years ago than they did last year. Maybe had a slightly better record 2 years ago than they did last year, but it feels pretty much about the same. That being said, there was a very different feeling after each of the last two seasons. You felt more content 2 years ago than you did last year, especially just how bad they lost last year to Southern Miss and to Tennessee. But I say this all this in saying, it felt like 2 years ago there were a lot more fans coming to games. Some of those big series at the end of the year, that Maryland series, there was some buzz.
And then
obviously didn't go their way, but there was some real buzz. I just didn't feel that as much last year. I say that, but then I do remember a couple of games that got a lot of people in seats.
Yeah, it's that Penn State game, the Saturday game, middle of April. It was the week before Little Five.
They were struggling.
Yeah, but there was a pretty good turnout for that game. It's so tough, and Jeff Mercer talks about this all the time, about how in the Big Ten, and this is why I think there isn't a big fan base for baseball in this conference. You're playing a summer sport in winter.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, the season starts in a month. There's snow on the ground right now. There's always the chance that it snows. Snow in the air. It's falling right now. There's always a chance that it snows when Indiana plays Miami of Ohio, but for some reason that doesn't happen.
No Miami this year, Nick. I know you're going to be really upset about that.
Oh, no. Really?
Yeah, they're going to open up with Purdue Fort Wayne at home on February 19th.
That screams trap game, by the way. That just... Ooh, wait, they're going to Cary?
Uh-huh.
Oh, huh. Are they playing it? Where are they playing those games?
The U.S. Conference.
No way.
Yep.
Why did I not know that?
Well, it's funny. I will say, Purdue Fort Wayne, maybe that's usually a trap game. I don't know if it's going to be a trap game because of how they lost last year.
Yeah, they might win 25-5.
That's the first home one.
Yeah.
Trap game might be more of the second Xavier game on February 25th.
That's weird because they play in Arizona and then they'll play again.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I bring up Cary for context, obviously for those who don't know, I interned there a couple years ago. Wow. Yeah, that's it's like worlds colliding. I'll have to shoot Darren Vaught a text because he was my boss. He still works down there. Tell him to get ready to learn Devin Taylor, and maybe Drew Burr. But yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm excited for baseball season. We hope you are too. If you're in Bloomington, if you ever want to go out to Bart Kaufman Field and catch a game, it's cheap. The hot dogs are good. Austin Platt will recommend you put mustard on them. It's a fun place to catch a game. I tell you though, I hope. No, they don't play in Indianapolis, do they?
No, they do this.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Victory Field.
Yeah.
They're going to try that again. It got rained out last year.
Twice. Well, kind of.
Yeah, and then it got moved. Yeah, it was weird.
And then it ended in a tie because Ball State doesn't have lights. Which, by the way, what are we doing? What are we doing? But yeah, Indiana plays Ball State in Indianapolis. Circled on your calendar. April 23rd is when that game will take place. Victory Field, 6 o'clock first pitch. One of the best minor league ballparks in the country. Ball State's always a pretty good program. They usually give Indiana some good fights. College baseball season's right around the corner. And as college baseball sickos ourselves, we are very excited about that, and you should be too. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Ben Haller, Nick Rodecap with you. And Ben, I feel like we're part of a very select few that can talk seemingly at length about, of all things, Big Ten baseball. Mm-hmm. It's, I don't know. Is that weird?
Hey, we spent about a week in West Council Bluffs, Iowa last year, right next to Omaha. Waited out a tornado in the back rooms of, what was that?
It was a Best Buy.
Best Buy. So we got our fair share of Big Ten baseball. Maybe it is weird. I don't know, but
yeah,
I will not apologize for it.
Oh man, I completely forgot. So yeah, we're driving to Omaha, which, by the way, you should never do that. Don't drive.
Look,
don't drive.
If we had to do it again, this may add 5 hours onto our trip, but I think I'd go around Iowa.
Yeah.
I think I'd go up to. What's
go
north
up to
of
Minnesota?
Iowa? Minnesota. Yeah, I'd go up to Minnesota, then come back down.
Yeah, or if you drive through Missouri, you at least get to drive right by Kauffman Stadium and Arrowhead Stadium. By the way, I heard some weird chanting going on under Arrowhead when we drove by it. Very strange. But yeah, Do not drive from Indiana to Nebraska, first of all. It's a great cure for insomnia and not much else. But if you're going to do it, then visiting Charles Schwab Field, the home of the College World Series, is a good thing to do. So, yeah, back in May, Ben and I drove out to Omaha for the Big Ten baseball tournament. We stayed in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is right across the river from Omaha. It was like a 10-minute drive from the ballpark. If you ever want to watch some interesting baseball, I'll say interesting, with some questionable umpiring, Iowa fans will remember what I'm talking about.
I just reminisced about that with some of the other guys that cover IU baseball. That Iowa-Illinois game.
They got absolutely hosed.
Terrible.
Yes, Iowa got hosed.
You remember, too, the umpire. I mean, they normally don't wear mics. It's college baseball. But the event like the Big Ten tournament, they have mics. Mm-hmm. So he's not used to it. And he makes the call, and Rick Heller just loses his mind. And the ump didn't turn the mic off.
Oh,
so
man.
He just heard it all.
We can't repeat what Iowa's head coach said. It's not suitable for FCC-regulated airwaves. But, yeah, you get a little bit of everything. And especially because it was in Omaha, there were a lot of Iowa fans there. Mm-hmm. And they left very disappointed. I left disappointed, too, because I wanted to see Brody Brecht pitch. He throws like 102 miles an hour. He's a Colorado Rocky now, which basically means his pitching career is dead. Yeah. Because nobody succeeds as a pitcher in Colorado. But yeah, we drove out to Omaha for the Big Ten tournament. Shout out to Nebraska baseball fans. I think just Nebraska fans in general. Probably some of the most dedicated fans in the conference. They were out tailgating at about, what did we get there? Probably like 7:30. Actually, it would have been 6:30, 7 o'clock, for an 8 a.m. baseball game on a Saturday, on the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. There were probably 10,000 Nebraska fans at that morning game, which was awesome. And, yeah, if you ever find yourself out at Charles Schwab Field, go to Rocco's, get some pizza. We couldn't get Jell-O shots because we weren't 21. But if we go back, we will get Jell-O shots. And I don't have money burning a hole in my pocket like Todd Graves does. But maybe I'll get Indiana on the Jell-O shots leaderboard. Because Lord knows they're not making the College World Series unless, well, I shouldn't say that. No self-imposed limitations. But they need their pitching staff.
Hey, that pitching staff comes around. I mean, look, I know obviously you're saying that like kind of kind-spirited, but I actually was talking about this with someone. The offense. Okay, the situation 2 years ago was like they are playing really competitive with Kentucky, and we're one win away from winning that Lexington Regional and going to the Super Regionals where they play LSU. But it felt like, I mean, that was the Paul Skeens LSU team.
They were never.
They would maybe score a run on LSU. This actually, to me, feels like an offense this year that can compete with any pitching staff in the country. I think that's the difference between 2 years ago and now.
Because you think of the guys who were on that team a couple of years ago. The young guys obviously have all matured. Mm-hmm. And Devin Taylor, I really like his approach at the plate, and the scouts like it too. Taylor, big lefty bat, has a ton of pop, but he doesn't sacrifice his his ability to hit for average just to try to hit bombs.
No, he doesn't strike out either.
No, he doesn't.
I mean, how rare is it to see, he's the Big Ten home run leader last year. How rare is it that the Big Ten home run leader doesn't strike out?
Yeah, he doesn't compromise his approach at the plate. In Omaha is a perfect example. Charles Schwab Field is a pitcher's park. It's known for being basically impossible to hit home runs, unless you're Nebraska. But Taylor, he'd go gap to gap if he had to. And that sounds cliche, I know. I mean, there's a bunch of buzzwords that scouts use, but Devin Taylor really is kind of the guy who now, he's not going to put together many uncompetitive at-bats. Tyler Cerny, even when last year he had a poor start in the field, he'd be the first to tell you that. He still found ways to produce with his bat. And he's a guy who's going to hit around 320, 330. He'll hit some bombs, and he'll hit for extra bases. Jason Oliver, what a surprise he was, right?
Well, I once again, I was also talking about this with someone. It felt like the conversation started because someone said that he just went on a little surge. at the end of the year. To me, it was more of he figured something out in his swing because he sustained it to the end of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, you already mentioned it, how hard it was to hit a home run in Charles Schwab Field last year. Jason Oliver did it. Freshman Jason Oliver, who didn't seem like he had that much pop, he was the third option at second base last year. I mean, they went Brandon Burkell. That didn't work out. They went Hayden Carlson. That didn't work out. Neither of those two are with the program anymore.
Oh, I remember when Hayden Carlson announced he was entering the portal. Ooh, that was funny.
Do you remember there was a time? It's the same kind of time period as when they went to Vanderbilt and got killed. Same around like the Belmont series a little bit.
What about the Illinois State loss?
That was bad too. But there was a time when they would literally. Because the Illinois State game was right before the Vandy game, wasn't it?
After.
Or after.
The
It was the day after.
Yeah.
They would literally just play all three of those second basemen and pinch hit for them the second they came up to bat. And then whoever was the third second baseman just had to take the rest of the at-bats. But, I mean, I'm not saying that to scrutinize the second base position, but that's just how big the breakout Jason Oliver was, a little over halfway through the season. He credited Jeff Mercer with some – I forget what he told him. I think it was –
Was it with his stride?
It was something with his. It might have been his stride.
It was a very small adjustment that he made.
Yeah,
yeah, but it worked.
I don't know if I'm making this stat up, but I think he finished the year hitting 10 bombs.
Yeah,
which is really good for a freshman, especially once again one that if we said at the beginning of the year, all right, Jason Oliver's gonna be pretty good. I don't know how much of it we would have thought would be power wise.
Yeah. And that home run he hit in Omaha too. Jason Oliver, he's a second baseman, so second basemen aren't usually known for their pop. Oliver comes in. It was a backside 3-run blast. There was wind. It got probably 3 rows back. He didn't crush it, but I mean, shoot, he hit an opposite field home run in a pitcher's park as a freshman. And his defense too. He's a freshman. He was last year. So he made some kind of puzzling mistakes, but he also made some really solid plays. Kind of actually reminded me of Cerny a little bit because you think back to Tyler Cerny's freshman year a couple of years back. The reason he was in the lineup was for his glove. And I feel like with Jason Oliver, he's about 50-50 glove and bat. He can produce on both sides, which is huge. And I think maybe last year some teams overlooked him a little bit. Because as far as big names in the Indiana lineup, Oliver wasn't near the top of that list. But I don't know that he's going to be sneaking up on as many people this year.
Yeah. I think he's their 3-hole hitter this year.
Really?
That's my take right now.
Taylor hits leadoff again?
Taylor will hit leadoff again. They love Taylor leadoff and then Cerny cleanup. They're gonna put that there for sure. But
Pine too. Yeah.
And there are a lot of options in that 3-hole. But that's at least what it looked like they were going with in the fall game.
Okay, yeah. And there's a lot that can change.
Yeah,
obviously. It does. And the injury bug killed IU last year.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, you want to talk about a guy who got a rotten end of the stick. A.J. Shepard. Just uber talented, insane power. When he gets on the field, good things happen. You think about that Coastal Carolina game, A.J. Shepard had that home run that decided it. That was the kind of game that really kickstarted Indiana last season, got them off to a hot start. And then Shepard got hurt again. It was kind of a freak injury against George Mason the next day. I hope that he can stay healthy because when he is healthy, he can be one of the best players on this Indiana team. But it just hasn't lined up for him so far. And it stinks. It stinks because he is so good, and he could add even more depth to this lineup as a catcher and a first baseman, especially with Brock Tibbetts being gone now. Joey Brincheski, I think, will be able to fill some of that at first base, which is a position that he just learned prior to last year, which makes what he did even more impressive. I kind of forgot about him. You're talking about Jason Oliver, but Indiana's got a lot of young talent on the offensive side. And the guys who have been playing every day since they're freshmen, they're juniors now. Josh Pine as a senior, he's got to be, I mean, he and Stadler are probably the only 2 seniors that'll start, I would say.
Pine and Stadler, you're saying?
Yeah, Pine and Stadler.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's going to be The way I would put it is, it feels like there are more than 9 guys where if they're not in the lineup, you think to yourself, how can you not find a spot in the lineup? Someone's going to get left out. Someone really good is going to get left out. This team has more than 9 really good hitters, especially with, obviously Stadler's taking over the catcher position. So I think there's going to be some sort of rotation probably. I mean, this is an Indiana team, and Jeff Mercer just is a coach who, in the past, he doesn't like to switch up the lineup a whole lot. Doesn't care for righty-lefty as much as most coaches do in the modern era. So it's going to be interesting to see how he switches that up.
Yeah. It's a good problem to have.
Great problem to have.
Yeah. When you have so much depth that, the guys on your bench could start at other schools. That's a great problem to have because it means that, kind of like we were talking about with Indiana basketball earlier, this is something Indiana basketball does not have. Like with Mackenzie Mbako slumping and Malik Renew being injured, it means that if you have to go to your bench, you run out of options pretty fast. Mm-hmm. For Indiana baseball, that is not the case. They've got guys who can come off the bench as pinch hitters if, let's say Devin Taylor goes over 3 with three bad strikeouts, which I don't think is going to happen. But say it does. You can bring in, like last year, you could bring in an Andrew Wiggins off the bench if you needed a spark. Because even if they don't get on base, they're going to put together a good at-bat. The one that comes to mind for me was when Wiggins pinch hit against Purdue. Yeah. And kind of kick-started one of those rallies, and Indiana had a lot of those against Purdue. These are guys who are used to adversity, and I think that's a very good thing to have. I'm interested to see, too, if TJ Schuyler kind of breaks in a little bit more, because it was kind of Jake Stadler who took over as the team's number 1 catcher after Tibbetts went down. Mm-hmm. But Schuyler in year 2, I'd like to see what kind of growth he's experienced in the offseason. I think he could be an asset. I don't know.
Well, with the injuries the last couple of years, one thing that Mercer hasn't liked is just it really felt like 2 years ago, Peter Cerruto took a ton of the workload behind the dish. Last year, Jake Stadler took a ton of the workload behind the dish. A lot of that's due to injury. Obviously, Matthew Ellis getting hurt 2 years ago. Both A.J. Shepard and Brock Tibbetts missing some time, and especially coming off the injury, they didn't want to catch him. That's obviously going to affect how much, if there is anyone else that can help. This year it's different because you could have a healthy A.J. Shepard who could catch. TJ Schuyler's in his sophomore year. I think they're going to trust him a little bit. You might see some starts for him. Hogan Denny is a catcher by trade who's one of the freshmen that's going to get at-bats early. So they have a lot of options back there this year. And I don't think Jake Stadler's going to have to start 53 out of 56 games.
Yeah. You bring up Hogan Denny. See, we haven't even talked about him. And he was a high school All-American. Some people have picked him to be Big Ten Freshman of the Year. I believe he went to Mooresville High School, which is, just up the road, relatively speaking. There's just so much depth. I'm excited. I'm getting all giddy here talking about Indiana baseball in January. That doesn't usually happen.
That's less than a month away.
Yeah. I can't believe they're not going to play Miami of Ohio.
No.
That was how I knew we were back.
The Tuesday 25-degree Miami, Ohio game.
Hey. Last year it was 42.
It actually was nice last year.
Yeah. The year before that it was like 50.
Yeah.
I was wearing short sleeves.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but you do you.
Hey, whenever you get a taste of warm weather, you've got to roll with it because Lord knows, like I said, it's going to be 1 degree tonight.
Yeah.
But it's going to warm up before you know it. You're listening to IU Sports Sunday. Back here on IU Sports Sunday, Nick Rotacap, Ben Haller with you. We are eagerly anticipating a lot of things coming up tomorrow. Among them, the national championship between Notre Dame and, as Curt Cignetti would say, Ohio State. Now, if you are an astute recognizer of patterns, you will notice that Notre Dame and Ohio State are the only 2 teams that beat Indiana this year, which, Ben Haller, means that, 1, the playoff committee got it right, which I don't think anybody with a pulse and a functioning brain would argue with. But there are some people who would say that Indiana didn't deserve it. That's not true. I think we've established that. But I tell you what, I'm a fan of this new format because neither of these teams would have made it if this was the 4-team playoff. But now I feel like we're left with the 2 best teams. when all is said and done. I think it's pretty cool.
It was a really weird transition from the first round being like, okay, every single game was a blowout pretty much. Every single game was a blowout. The better team won in all of them. So it's like, okay, maybe there are too many teams. And then the next round comes around, and then almost every game – actually, no, every game was an upset.
Every game was a banger. Yeah.
At least in terms of seeding, not necessarily like Vegas odds. I don't know about that. But seeding, every single game was an upset. So I don't know. College football's in a weird spot because after that first round, I was sitting here thinking, there's just too big of a gap between the top 3 teams and everybody else. But this year was kind of a weird example of like, okay, the best teams in the country are not the teams that are seeded the best right now. And, it's weird. Ohio State, the Michigan loss, I think it just proves that in college football, it's just you lose more than one game in the past and you were done. And I just don't think that every team that lost 2 games didn't have a chance to win the national championship. It makes me wonder what teams didn't make the playoffs in the past, if there are any, that could have had a chance at the championship. I do think this year's just a weird anomaly in Ohio State and Notre Dame being the 7-8 or the 7-8, right?
Yeah. Because it's a good point. I do think that there needs to be a conversation about the way the playoff is seeded.
Definitely.
Because, I don't know, giving byes to Arizona State and Boise State, no. Like, just because you win your conference doesn't mean you're one of the 4 best teams in the country.
Yeah.
Especially, and you're going to see this more in the future, with how big these conferences are. Big 12 has 16 teams. The Big 10 has 18. The SEC has 16. Like, you're not going to have parity in scheduling anymore. And this is not an argument to bring back divisions, because as we saw with the Big 10, like the Big 10 West was horrible compared to the Big 10 East. Basically, whoever won the game was going to win the Big 10. But now, with these conferences, Indiana got the benefit of a relatively easy Big 10 schedule this year. You're going to see other teams get the benefit of that in the future. I think the byes should go to the top 4 teams, regardless of conference.
Yeah.
And if that's 2 Big 10 and 2 SEC teams, fine. But I think not only do we need to reconsider how the byes work, I think we also need to reconsider the existence of preseason polls. Because so much of the strength of schedule argument is predicated on polls that are released before any product is put on the field. And it's based a lot on the results from the previous year, recruiting rankings, which, while sometimes a good indicator, are also sometimes a total crapshoot, and just a ton of hypotheticals that rarely, if ever, play out on the field. Like, this year, Georgia was the preseason number 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, really? And that's based entirely on the fact that they had won the previous 2 national titles. I think there's a fundamental flaw in the way that works. And I think, honestly, I get it. Like, we need rankings to push storylines and to, drive TV ratings for some people, I guess. But I just don't see how preseason rankings should factor into strength of schedule when, like Florida State was a preseason top 10 team. They sucked. I think we just need to reevaluate the way that works, because I don't know that the way we're doing it right now is the best.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess I haven't felt like the preseason poll has played a ton into strength of schedule. Are you saying more of like how it's viewed in the poll or how it's viewed by like the playoff committee?
I think,
because I don't think the playoff committee looks at that much.
I would hope that they don't.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you're gonna talk about like ranked teams, right?
Yeah, but my point is just that, okay, yeah, preseason polls are stupid. I agree. But I still think the polls in general are like the AP polls awful.
It is, yes.
It's just it's just trends.
It is, and brand bias.
Yeah,
I could talk about brand bias all day, and for most of football season, I did. Yeah, I think the AP poll is dumb, and even, oh man, football, the enemy of like the enemy of football is sample size, and it always will be. 12 games, it's a lot, yes, but with the NFL, you get a lot more of an indicator of where teams stand because they play more games. That's not, like we don't have the sample size problem in other sports. That's just the way it is with football. So there's always going to be some sort of gray area. But I don't think that you should put any. I guess this is a long-winded way of saying you shouldn't put any stock in preseason polls.
Yeah.
Those are stupid.
So here's where it gets slippery, though, with preseason polls is by saying that, you're kind of just saying that polls should be strictly based on what you've done this year and not what your potential is. The problem is when there's got to be some point. When do you want the first poll to come out, I guess is what you're saying.
Let's go week 3.
If you do week 3, like there are teams that, are really good. Like I don't have a specific example off my head, but there was definitely a team that's that made the playoffs this year that played 3 bad teams in the first 3 weeks. So it's like
Indiana.
Well, I mean, not even Indiana, because still winning UCLA in week 3, there are teams who probably didn't have a win as good as that at that point in the year.
That's true. Notre Dame.
Yeah, Notre Dame.
Because
Perfect
week 3
example.
they would have just lost to NIU.
Yeah.
Like going into week 3, they'd be 1-1 with a win over Texas A&M and a loss to NIU. Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's just weird. Once again, I'm not saying that you're wrong. Like I think that the preseason poll is stupid, and looking at it's pretty dumb. But I think it's more of the whole poll itself. The AP poll is stupid.
The system.
I hate it in football. I hate it in basketball. I really don't like it.
Indiana was a top 15 team in the AP poll this year.
Yeah.
In the preseason men's basketball.
Men's basketball. Yeah.
They were still getting votes a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. See, it's funny.
Like
it's funny because you just mentioned it. I mean, we're on the total opposite side of the brand bias.
Yeah. That makes it so obvious to me that, and it's impossible, but these AP voters, they don't watch the sport enough. And with college basketball, it's nigh on impossible. Yeah. Just because there are so many games and there are so many teams, it is almost impossible to get a big enough sample size to rank the top 25 teams. It's not an exact science by any means, but I have my qualms.
Yeah, well, it's also, I know it sounds crazy, but if you watch the Illinois game, it looked worse than 25, which I know 25 itself is already not a very good number. The same thing happened with Louisville when they were down, 36 at some point against Louisville?
Louisville, I think, yeah, they led by 36, 39, something in there.
And they were able to cut it to like 28 or something like that?
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that you don't necessarily get the best picture.
Yeah, and how much of that is, I liken it, this is apples to oranges, but I liken it to Notre Dame at the end of the game against Indiana. They put in their second team defense and let off the gas. Let's just call it what it is. I know that game was a 10-point margin at the end. Yes, I understand that. But Notre Dame was more than 10 points better than Indiana. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you talk about Louisville and Illinois basketball, those games. Louisville killed Indiana in that game. Illinois was on pace to score 120 points.
Ridiculous half.
Yeah, it's just insane. And then they went out and lost to USC.
Yep.
So, yeah, sure. No, they lost to USC first.
But still, I mean, that was one game prior. But they also didn't have Yakachonis that game, which would obviously showed in the Indiana game that he's pretty important.
Yeah, he and Braden Smith, man. I'd love to watch them go toe-to-toe.
Yeah.
Man. I can't help but think about how Braden Smith is from Westfield, Indiana. And once upon a time, it was Indiana recruiting all the in-state kids. Mm-hmm. And now it's Purdue. That just doesn't sit right. And I mean, look at I could rant about this. There's not enough time to talk about the way Matt Painter constructs his rosters versus the way Mike Woodson has constructed his rosters. Like production over potential. Matt Painter might be kind of similar to Kurt Signetti, no?
Yeah.
Like taking a bunch of guys, obviously Zach Edey is an exception, but you take a bunch of guys who on their own might not be the best, right? You put them together and you turn them into something great. That's what Indiana football did this year.
Yeah.
That's what Matt Painter has done with Purdue basketball. I mean, yeah, Purdue's had guys go to the league like Jaden Ivey. But obviously Zach Edey, yes. But I just think that the way they play, everybody knows their role, right? Everybody knows their role. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like with Indiana that hasn't always been the case this year. All that is to say, obviously, we don't like Purdue, but I think you've got to respect Matt Painter because he's a heck of a coach, man.
Well, definitely. I mean, the only qualm with him is obviously the March, not having a ton of March success until last year, but I think last year kind of silenced all of that, making it to the national championship. But Indiana is not even making those tournaments.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And as someone who, I have friends at Purdue, I spend a lot of time up there. Mackey Arena, the atmosphere difference, especially right now, between Mackey Arena and Assembly Hall, it's very noticeable. It's very noticeable. And I just wish that, because I wish Assembly Hall had juice.
Yeah.
For the men's games. Like for the women's game against USC today, as long as Indiana keeps that close, that place is going to be pretty good. Mm-hmm. The Iowa game last year, that atmosphere was awesome. But for the men's side, I don't know. And when the team is as inconsistent as it is, I can't blame the fans, right? Because at the end of the day, most of them, unless you're a student and, I don't know, your parents paid your bursar bill or whatever, you're paying your hard-earned money to go to these games. So I understand. I understand if you're frustrated. That's very fair. But as we wrap things up today on IU Sports Sunday, I'm thinking prediction for Indiana USC since we tip in about 2 hours.
I'm gonna go Hoosiers. They had the experience against UCLA, playing a really good team at home. I think they take advantage of this time. I think it'll be lower scoring. I'm gonna go Indiana 67-64.
67-64 over Juju Watkins, Kiki Iriafen, and the USC Trojans. Indiana by 3. I'm going to say Indiana by 7.
Wow, both going Indiana.
Let's go 70-63. That game tips at noon on NBC. From Assembly Hall, it's a whiteout. It's going to be fun. For Ben Haller, I'm Nick Rodecap. You have been listening to IU Sports Sunday.